Florida State is humiliated by Notre Dame, 52-3. Let's talk about it.
You are Locked On Seminoles, your daily podcast on the Florida State Seminoles. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome into Locked On Seminoles, the live show after the Notre Dame football game. A disgraceful performance, to say the least. But I am Brian Smith. Thank you for tuning in. There are a few things to talk about that I actually thought were positive early on in the game. I'll discuss a few of those, and then I'm pretty much just going to jump in the chat. 52-3 speaks for itself. But first off, thank you once again for making this your first listen. I truly appreciate it. Today's show is brought to you by FanDuel. You can start the season with a big return on FanDuel. New customers can place a $5 bet, and you'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. All right, here are my basic thoughts on this football game. I was surprised. Florida State had its ninth different starting lineup with the offensive line. I got a bunch of notes here. They got a little bit unimportant, if you would, towards the second half, but the first thing I noted is they came out in the first half, and especially the first quarter, they ran the football, power football, right at Notre Dame. That's a team that has a lot of future NFL guys, and they ran it right at them. Bizarre. There's no way in the world you could have convinced me that that was going to happen, but it did. As the saying goes, what you see is what you see. There is no lying there. It happened. It's on film. So with that being in mind, let's just go over a few statistics from this game. I think that it's kind of interesting that Florida State started like that, but not surprisingly as well. Florida State also struggled, and I'm being very, very kind here. They also struggled to do something that I think is kind of embarrassing in a way, and that's just to adjust it all. Like the interception there towards the end that Glenn threw. If you run a play enough times, somebody's going to adjust to you and come up with something. And as I've got my iPad here looking at the stats, Florida State doing the different quarters, they came up with a play here or there, but then they would go backwards. They were so predictable. And then, of course, the blocking up front. I'll talk about the O-line momentarily. But here are some of the key statistics. Third downs. Florida State was 3 out of 17. That's 17.6%. Notre Dame was 5 for 12. Not great, 41.7%. Third down and longs, Florida State 0 for 7. Now, not that you're going to convert a lot, but I mean, they just weren't even competitive on those. Sacked, sacks are a huge part of games. But if I remember, I think Notre Dame had 8. If I remember, 10 tackles for loss, 8 sacks. I mean, Notre Dame came within one of their school record for sacks. Notre Dame, they've been playing football for a long time. So that shows you how bad it was. Riley Mills didn't even play like the fourth quarter. He had 3 sacks. He had back-to-back sacks. He's a defensive tackle. They had a backup defensive lineman, Heinisch. He had 2 sacks. I mean, the guy doesn't even play a ton of reps, and he's murdering guys. Florida State up front was terrible. But again, if you look at the comparison with the quarters, in the first quarter, Florida State had 64 rushing yards. But here's the thing. Second quarter, 13. Then you go into the third quarter for Florida State, their rushing yards, 26. And then in the fourth quarter, they got 103 because they just put in all the backups, but they still couldn't score. Even with 100 yards rushing in a quarter, they still couldn't score. It's just unbelievable. But for the game, here are the totals on some of the big numbers. Total yards, 208 for Florida State, 453 for the Irish, 88 passing yards. Oh my goodness. For Florida State. Notre Dame's passing game stunk and still threw for 252. Penalties, Florida State had 56, Notre Dame 50, 14 first downs for the Noles, 22 for the Irish. Rushing average, 2.8 for Florida State, which is obviously terrible. 6.3 for Notre Dame. Sack adjusted rushing average, 4.9 for the Noles, 7.1 for the Irish. They actually had more time of possession than Notre Dame because that one long drive where they got the field goal. Red zone. This is something that Florida State, I still don't understand how they're so up and down on anything, but Notre Dame was 5 for 5 in the red zone. That's really, really bad. Only 1 field goal, if I remember correctly. Florida State, again, no turnovers. They did not create a turn. It's like 6 games in a row. It's unbelievable how bad they were. Now, from some of my own stats and just kind of combinations of things, this is where it gets really, really crazy. Even on the first play where Notre Dame busted for the touchdown, Riley Leonard's escape up the middle, I posted this to X on my FB Scout handle. He goes up the middle, makes 2 guys miss. They took terrible angles. And then he's going down the sideline. Jackson, the D-line, probably not going to get the play, but he's loafing. I mean, it's like the 3rd or 4th play from scrimmage, and he's not putting forth effort. That's not a good sign. Florida State's tackling and their angles early in the game was atrocious. And then once you got into the second quarter, Notre Dame's defense kind of settled in. Florida State had no creativity. The first drive was great. They had some really good plays. They schemed it up well. Hats off to the Florida State coordinators and coaching staff in general. They got some good things going there. But after that, man, it was bad. O-line, again, was physical. First quarter, they were still 0 for 5 on third down, and they were 0 for 8 on third down through the first half. I mean, you just can't be in that situation. One thing that I thought was funny, I mentioned a few moments ago that Riley Mills, he's probably going to make it to the NFL for Notre Dame. They had a play where the H-back was Amari Williams. Remember, now he enrolled a year early at Florida State as a tight end. They had Amari on a 305-pound, fifth-year senior, future NFL defensive tackle in a pass-blocking scenario. What are you doing? Why don't you just tell the kid to go fail? That was one of the most horrific designs that I've ever seen. He is 18 years old. Riley Mills is 22 or 23. I have met Riley Mills. When you shake that man's hand, you will not see yours. It will be engulfed. Terrible decision by Florida State's coaching staff. Let's see here. There was a play. This is something indicative. Back to the sacks. What has happened to Darius Washington? There's a play where Mills walked him back to the quarterback with one hand stab, and just drove him back. It's like Darius never played. He's a 6th-year senior. It's one thing for Amari. That's a 6th-year guy. He just got walked back to the quarterback. Are you serious? Just terrible. There was no continuity from the second quarter on for Florida State. And one could even argue really just past the first drive, they just didn't have any answers because they can't block them. They just can't block anybody. I know the Noles play Charleston Southern next. That's a team they'll probably beat. But the way their offense is, I don't think there's any locks for anything because they just can't continuously pass protect in any sense of one play to the next. They'll have a pretty good pass protection. The next play, it's just a jailbreak. So those were really bad signs. The touchdown run for Notre Dame for Jeremiah Love late in the game was 10:53 left, kind of late. They pushed Florida State, like all 4 of their defensive linemen in the end zone. They kind of quit on that play. Defensively, they were just done. And I don't blame them. Like the offense had done basically nothing, but it's still bad to see guys just standing straight up and just getting driven back. The team is slowly quitting on Norvell. They did at the beginning of the game, though. I'm not saying they did. I'm surprised by that. They didn't have a whole bunch of woes there. They're just not well coached. Run gap fits. Obviously, the 65-yard touchdown run, that is a joke. Florida State cannot have those explosive plays here. This is a good chart for that. Let's see what the chart says. Big plays. Florida State, they had the 15-yard screen early in the game. Very early, that very first pass that they got anything out of was to Tofili from Luke Kromenhoek. They didn't have another passing play that was a big one, 15+, according to the chart that I have. They had a few nice runs. The 27-yard run by Sam Singleton up the middle included, but Notre Dame just destroyed them with big passing plays. And again, Riley Leonard's not that great of a thrower. 28, 21, 15, 22, 20, 26, 26, and 16. They had the 65-yard run by Jadarian Price. That was a terrible fit by Florida State. Pretty well blocked by Notre Dame, but angles were bad. 34-yard run by Leonard. That was one of the worst defensive plays for Florida State this entire season. And then for the most part, Notre Dame just hit a bunch of 3 to 5 yard plays on the run game. And they just took advantage of Florida State not being able to move the ball. It's just really bad. So with that, I'm going to take a quick break, and then I'm just going to dive into the chat. Everybody, whatever you think about the game, please comment. I'm going to be reading the comments here in just a second. That is next here on Locked On Seminoles. Nothing delivers comfort and joy quite like the unrivaled quality and taste of Omaha Steaks. This year, skip the holiday hustle and bustle and save 50% off gourmet gifts site-wide at omahasteaks.com. Plus, get a $30 reward card when you shop early and score an extra $30 off with promo code COLLEGE. With 5 generations of experience, they consistently deliver the world's best steak experience, and the gifting experts at Omaha Steaks have made it easy to deliver the perfect gift with thoughtfully curated gift packages starting at $89.99. For legendary steaks to mouth-watering desserts and more, save 50% off site-wide at omahasteaks.com. Plus, our listeners get an extra $30 off with promo code COLLEGE and a $30 reward card when you shop early. That's 50% off omahasteaks.com and extra $30 off promo code COLLEGE. Minimum purchase may apply. All right, let's jump into the chat here and get started. Once again, any general comments, fire away. I do have a couple of key questions, but I want to hear everybody's first comments just in general. So here we go. James Fountain, we suck. At least Miami, Florida lost today. That's true. The state of Florida today sucked at football. Somebody let me know. Did UCF win? I know they were in a close game. I'm not sure if they did or if they didn't. But, man, Miami, I watched that Miami game. They played pretty poorly too. Let's see what we got here. We got offensive line is laughable at this point. Yes, 10 tackles for loss, 8 sacks for Notre Dame. And if you break it down, here's a statistic for you. I mean, this is insane. Total plays for Florida State. How many plays did they get? 26 passes, 43 rushes. So that's 69. So 1 out of 7 plays for Florida State were going backwards. That's over 14% of the plays that the Noles ran went in reverse. They had 2 punts partially blocked and another one that should have been. So special teams is the first game Notre Dame's got a good punt block unit, but that 3 different punts, that might be something I need to look at on effort because that's ridiculous. Against any team at any level, that's ridiculous. You have an offense that, quite frankly, doesn't have any continuity in the passing. None, even when there is protection. And the run defense, even though it has really good moments, when they miss, they miss. So, like, it's across the board. But your point, Vashon, the O-line is a joke. I feel like Cat beat themselves. We 0-8 right now. Oh, Cal beat themselves. The Cal game, if you remember back, they were in the red zone twice in the fourth quarter and missed a field goal, and then they had to go for it. And they had a couple of false starts, etc. Florida State should be winless right now. They should be winless. It's unbelievably bad. Garrett, Brian is going to go off tonight. You know what, Garrett? It's funny you mentioned that. It's so bad when the interception happened at the end of the game, because I thought Florida State was going to score. I mean, Notre Dame's got all their backups in and stuff. I'm like, the point spread for those of you following any of this, Florida State's over-under as a team total was 7.5. I'm like, they're going to score and they're going to get it. When, what's his name? Luke Towich was running that back from Notre Dame. I was literally laughing out loud. My neighbor probably could have heard me. It was so loud. It's just terrible. Southern Man, nothing will change. This is who we are. Thanks, Mike. Post of the night right there from Southern Man. Malik Stuckey. Bench Brock for the remainder of the game. Give him his walking papers. Brock Glenn is horrible. I mean, right now he's horrible. He hit that little screen early on, and then he missed like his next 9. Bro, that's hard. Matter of fact, I'll look here. But I'm pretty sure Brock, this is not a good look for old Brock. Holy cow. Yeah, he missed 9 in a row, including a pick. And then he gave up the touchdown to Luke. Yeah, that's not good. Krumanock wasn't great either, but he was more accurate. For the game, This is the stat line for each quarterback for the Noles. Brock Glenn, 5 out of 18, 51 yards, 2 picks, including the pick 6. Krumahawk, 5 out of 8, not 18, 37 yards, no picks, no interceptions, no touchdowns, obviously. So as a unit between them, they were 10 out of 26 for 88 yards. I mean, they averaged 3.5 yards per attempt. I mean, that's just horrific. The best thing for tonight is Tofili, 16 carries, 77 yards, and 3 catches for 20 yards. Tofili is a good football player. He did not deserve to be on this team this year, but it is what it is. All right. The L23 GOAT, they have to get Norvell out. I've been saying that for quite a while, and I know some people were on that before I was. Is this the worst Florida State team ever? Mr. Met. 1970, they were just talking about 70. They won one game. They went like 1-9 or 1-10. 74, I think 2 years for Bowden took over. It pretty close. Brock is turning into a turnover machine from Chad Kensworth. You're not wrong. Brock is terrible right now. There is no ifs, ands, or buts. A quick note about him, and I'm going to discuss this on the Sunday show. Brock looks confident. Everything looks normal before the snap, but his throwing motion and his footwork and all that, everything needs to be right with it. It's hard, but he's not consistent with that stuff yet. I think the situation, because Florida State is so bad and they're getting hit so often as quarterbacks, is really impacting him. Just my opinion. Chad Kensworth. Let's see. Norvell is simply a bad recruiter and terrible play caller. It's funny that you mentioned that because, again, Florida State came out, and I liked their first series of calls, and they got an 8-minute drive. They had Notre Dame on the ropes a little bit there in that first drive, kept them off balance. But after that, there was very little ingenuity. I know they can't block them up front, so why are you running generic plays? Notre Dame has way more talent, and they're way more congruent with what they're doing together, tackling, run gap fits. You're not going to 3-yard teams down the field. It's just not going to happen. Paula Pavia, look, he says, I couldn't watch. You're better for it. I just spent 3.5 hours watching one of the worst football games of the year. Notre Dame didn't just dominate. They dominated when they didn't even have their B game offensively. Jeremiah Love didn't even do anything in this game, and he's probably their best overall football player. That's the one guy that Florida State slowed down. And they still got beat. They gave up 45 points to the offense and a pick 6. Horrific. Julio Melendez tuned out in the second quarter. Can't blame you. JB expected a blow up, but man, no fight or anything. I'll disagree with that in the first half. Second half, Florida State, it was in and out, play to play. Who was giving all their effort and who wasn't? I was going to go through the name. There wasn't a ton of players that played hard on every snap, I don't think, especially come fourth quarter when guys are coming in and out. And the game was so far out of hand. It is what it is, but it's still not a good sign. All right. Malik Stuckey. Knowles had strip sack and grabbed him around the waist. When he came around that corner, I said to myself, if Knowles hits him in the sternum, the ball is going to pop out. He could have just grabbed the football. Riley Leonard didn't even see him coming, which is weird because it was not his blind side that Knowles came from. And Knowles grabbed him around the waist. That's a senior football player. Not as good a play as he should have made. Knowles had strip sack. Jake Corner, 17. The strength and conditioning staff needs to go as well. No one seemed to be stronger or physical as well. It wouldn't shock me. Clint Shelby. Can we get Venables as DC once he gets fired from Oklahoma? They're not going to fire him this year. Got news for you. He's not going to get fired. Mike Merrick. Hey, Mike, what's up? I don't think as many guys are going to get fired as I had originally talked about. And I might discuss that at length tomorrow. The Napier situation, for those of you who don't know, he is not getting fired unless something changes because they gave him a public vote of approval to go into next year. That shakes up things in terms of the coaching staff opportunities for Florida State, potentially. I don't know what Florida's going to do. I assume coordinators are going to get fired similar to Florida State, but that'll be an interesting thing. It's going to be all about coaches, just a little bit about the Notre Dame game, all about coaches tomorrow. Justin Alley. Arizona State beat UCF 35-31. Thank you for that info. I know UCF was up in the fourth quarter, so they choked again. So 0 for 4. Did USF lose too? Like that'd be all 5 of the programs that get the coverage in the state of Florida. Jay Corner 17. It seems like Mike is trying to get fired. This team gets worse each week. There is no improvement at all. The running game in the first quarter was the only thing I'd fight back on that. But otherwise, you were correct. Really bad. Garrett, for what it's worth, Jacksonville State lost on a Hail Mary tonight. Isn't that ironic? Hayden Franklin, we need a new offensive quarter that can recruit and call plays. Norvell will 100% have to give up the play calling next year. I don't disagree. He sucks at it. What on earth is motivating Mike if he's starting at $63 million to get fired? Sounds like early retirement to me. Mike's already made enough money. He doesn't have to work anymore. Even if he didn't get a penny from Florida State again, he's a multimillionaire. Maximus, 90% of this team doesn't deserve to play on a field named after Bowden. Yeah, right now I'd say, I don't know about 99%, but a lot. It's pretty bad. Senior Comrade 123, can't wait for this BS excuses. There's not going to be any excuses for me, brother. Not going to be any at all. It's pretty bad, and they are who they are. I'll be right back with more from Locked On Seminoles. Get ready to tackle the NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. Visit FanDuel.com to join today. You'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win that first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the National Football League. All right, let's get back into the chat. Garrett, Dirk Cutter or Dirk Diggler? I'll take either to call the plays at this point. Cutter is somebody I brought up on a podcast. You can check it out on the coaching tab if you just want to look for it that way on YouTube. But it's pretty simple. Cutter was at Jacksonville Jaguars. He was the head coach with the Tampa Bay Bucks. I remember seeing him at a game at Berkeley Prep a number of years ago when his kid was there. He's a guy from Idaho. He's coaching at Boise State right now, but they're going to lose Genty. Maybe he wants to come back to Florida. I don't know. You at least have to make the phone call. It can't hurt. And you could set up a scenario with him, just my opinion, where it goes like this. If you come in and do a good job and Norvell doesn't do a good job, we want to get rid of him. You'll at least be under consideration for the job. That's how I would approach that. Just my opinion. Jay Corner. If these coaches come available, such as Lincoln Riley and Brent Venables, would the AD go after them if Mike is kept as head coach? Number one, Lincoln Riley will never be a coordinator again unless it's in the NFL. There's too many college programs he can get a head job. Forget that. Same with Venables. I think he would retire if he was fired and somebody didn't want to give him a job. He waited forever to take the OU job because he was really picky about not just being a head coach. He wanted an elite job or no job. Those two guys are not options. Maximus. It's not like they want to keep Norvell around to save the recruits. They already left. Cubs 0209, we got to get Kurt Signetti. Dude is legit. I'd imagine it would be really hard to get him for a couple of reasons. Number one, the Norvell contract. He's $63.8 million, I believe, is his buyout. I don't know exactly, but that's what it said in the Tallahassee Democrat, so I'm just going by that. Plus, Signetti's in year one at Indiana. You got to pay that buyout too. And then pay him. It's just not realistic. Timing's terrible. At this point, is Jordan Travis just an exception to the norm? The team is full of 3 to 5 stars and is playing like a Division II roster. That's a great question. Jordan Travis was obviously terrible in 2019, 2020. He was up and down at 21. And then in 22, he kind of turned the corner. Then last year, he was a much more consistent passer, and he was a pain in the butt to defend, period. But, again, exception, not the rule. Why it's this way, I don't know. I had somebody ask me earlier today, I was texting, this might be the worst turnaround in the history, not of Florida State, but in college football from good to bad. Name a team that was at the level Florida State was undefeated through the regular season and their conference championship game that sits at 1-9 the next year. Has it ever happened? I don't think so. Stacy, this team sucks. That is true. Maximus, no more head coaches who didn't deserve to be hired at a place like Florida State. I don't disagree with that. Seminole, big boy. FSU got enough funds to let all these coaches go if they want to. Yeah, but you also have, this is where it gets complex. That's a good point, but you have coaching situations to deal with. You got to pay buyouts somewhere else to get the guy. Then you got to pay him. You got stadium renovations, and you got the ACC lawyers and the ACC case. All of that stuff. This is nuts. Florida State is spread as thin as it can get. The timing is really bad. I don't disagree with you, but Florida State's not going to put it on their tab. They're going to want boosters to do it. Those are private conversations with a limited number of people that are really going to be involved. Not the easiest thing in the world. Garrett, USF lost 28-7. Every Florida team lost tonight. FAU had a bye. Hilarious. Well, Pitt just choked too. Doesn't surprise me. Pitt's a pretty good team, but they're not great. Got a young quarterback. Can we see something like what they did with Bobby and bringing in Jimbo as a success? That's possible, but here's the deal. Norvell is not going to accept a coach in waiting. Bobby is at the end of his tenure. Norvell doesn't look at it that way. Steve Shaw, wish we lost to Cal. We can't even get losing right. That's hilarious. Maximus, maybe Norvell thinks we'll get the first pick in the ACC recruiting draft. He ain't getting first in anything other than his butt needing to be kicked out the door. Southern man, they will change nothing. Define change nothing, meaning the staff. I mean, there's going to be people get fired. I know that everybody expects the coordinators to be gone at minimum. I think the number of coaches that will be gone from the staff, whether fired or they leave, will be 5 or more now. I just think there's so much negativity. There'll be guys that just want to leave. Maybe not even guys that Norvell asked to. Change is probably good for a lot of parties involved. B, FSU can't afford not to fire Norvell and staff. This is something that I argue. But again, you got to have a booster to do this. Just Norvell's buyout, and that's not counting buying somebody else's buyout to get him to come here, the staff, everything else, is over $60 million. So there's a lot of argument to be made with it. Maximus, this is the worst ever. The closest, I believe, was Pitt in 81 or 82. I think Pitt went on probation. Israel Allen, fire. Yeah, well, yeah, fire coach. I get it. Terry, Norvell needs to be trying to contact Sluka from UNLV ASAP. Seminole, big boy. Thank you for giving us a voice. Hey, man, I'll let it rip. In my opinion, outside of the special teams coach, there really isn't anybody other than Surtain on the offensive or defensive staffs, for me, that's not at least in consideration for being fired, as far as the actual position coaches and, of course, Norvell. Garrett, do we make coaching moves considering we have a bye week next week? I think they'll wait till after the season. Maximus, who realistically sticks around players and coaches? I have a list of players that I think will be looking. Privately, I'm not going to publish it, and it's an alarming list. I'm like, people are thinking about like, well, who's Florida State going to add in the portal? Let me tell you right now, Florida State will have a worse roster next year than they do this year. Mark it down. Who's going to join this train wreck? Why? Any parent that signs off saying, yeah, I can't wait for you to go to Florida State right now, needs to have their head examined. Why would you send your kid into this? You don't know if Norvell's going to be here next year, and he's probably not going to get fired because all the money. Why would you send your kid here? Why? Christian, what would change next year without any elite recruits coming in? What quarterback from the portal can make a difference? I don't know who the quarterbacks are going to be. I was talking about this with Seth, with a bunch of people, with probably 4 or 5 guys talking about the portal. I know the kid from Arizona has been rumored with like Auburn. He's a turnover machine, but he's got talent. Spencer McLaughlin and I were talking about the kid from TCU. I don't remember his name. And the kid Dieter, I believe, from Washington State. Those two are guys to watch. Washington State doesn't have any pull, and that kid's good. So they might get screwed again. Cam Ward left them last year. But outside of that, there's a lot of decent quarterbacks, but we don't know who's going to jump in the portal. That's the thing. TCU might be pretty good next year too. So it may be a situation where one of the better ones just doesn't leave. Who knows? We'll see. Southern Man, look on the bright side. We broke 59 and we're 3 points shy away from the perfect game on offense. Terry, he needs to hit the portal hard for experienced and proven O-linemen. They might be able to get some, but I don't think this is what's going to happen. I'll get that off. This is very interesting. If you look at it from what they need standpoint, what you're saying, Terry, is correct. However, what booster is going to want to buy in right now? Do you really think the boosters are going to spend money in this offseason? That's a whole nother conversation that now needs to be discussed. And it will be on Sunday's podcast here at Locked On Seminoles. Will they have even remotely the kind of money that they need? I'm telling you, next year's roster is going to be worse than this year's. No doubt about it. Maximus. Yeah, it's nice, but listening to someone sugarcoat this, yeah, I get it. Yeah, I don't sugarcoat. If you need friendly, happy, joy, but first off, don't be a Florida State football fan right now, but don't watch my pod. I am A to B, bottom line. People that don't like it, probably watch something else. Garrett, why would we wait until the end of the season? How do we have any chance of recruiting if we wait? This is the deal. The recruiting works like this, and it's a good question. You need to have all of the following in place for months for this to work. You need to have the coaching change in place, which obviously can't happen. When you fire the guy, you got to hire somebody. He's at another school or he's in the NFL. And even if you did hire somebody, there's a waiting period because you have to go through state legislation on a background check. Signing day is December 4th. This recruiting class is screwed. Florida State is in a really bad spot. So my guess is some of the kids that sign, and I don't know how many will end up signing, will end up backing out of that in January if they don't like the coaching changes. There's nothing Florida State can do. They have zero leverage right now because the timing of the portal, I think it starts December 9th, something like that. And then the 4th for the signing day is awful for schools that change jobs when the coaches are getting fired. Hayden Franklin, are you including Odell Higgins in your list of possible firings? I don't think Odell will get fired, but they'll offer him something. Like I said it the other day in one of the pods that I did on the coaching section on YouTube. Again, there's a tab for the coaches and all the coaching news. He's been a great person for Florida State in numerous ways. But the D-line's not very good. And he's 70 years old or something like that. I don't know exactly, but he's pretty old. If he wants to bow out, you could give him a job in the Florida State administration in some way, shape, or form. He's done many great things for this institution. But at the same time, are they doing their job up front? No. He's the D-line coach. So I don't think he's fallible or infallible. I mean, he has to gain criticism too. It's, everybody's looked pretty bad this year. Nate Dogg, always great to beat FSU. Yeah, thanks. Let's see. Mike, thanks for the honesty. Year 5, and we look worse than we did in Mike's first 2 years. On top of that, we have our worst recruiting class in forever. We're screwed. Shaking my head. So was DJU really that bad? The first few losses, it seemed like everyone, including me, was saying he was the reason. I told people you can't play freshmen and redshirt freshman quarterbacks, especially inserting them in the middle of the year because they didn't get any reps, and the offensive line stinks. That combination does not work. Florida State is in a really bad spot. Mike Gardner, Notre Dame fan here. College football is better when Florida State is good. Keep your heads up. Tough year. Thank you. Regis, unless we bring in the best assistant coach, this team is going to be worse next year. Like you say, the roster is going to be bad. Yeah, there's no doubt. There's no doubt. This is by far the worst O-line in college football. For Power 4, there's no doubt. For those you didn't see, again, Notre Dame had 10 tackles for loss and 8 sacks, and they didn't even play their starters really in the fourth quarter. That's not a good sign. Carson Cued, it's a coaching problem, a big one. 100%. Well, let's see. We are not Marshall. When does Norvell ditch the portal roster building and go hard in the traditional recruiting? That's a great question. I think it's a little late for that, and he's going to pay for it with getting fired next year. He should get fired this year, but because of the contract, my guess is he doesn't. And I think that'll be a mistake, but I think that's what will happen. Next year, 0-12. That's from Southern Man. I don't know about 0-12, but under 5 wins, probably. If I had to guess right now, I'd say Florida State will win 4 games in 2025. Let's see. Y'all falling in the same hole we did in Tennessee. That's okay. Carson, you're a Tennessee fan. Good to see you. Dion is the answer. He is a winner. He has been around winners. Colorado year 2 would crush us in year 5. Well, he's got Travis, which he'll probably never get a player like that again, and his son ain't going to be there. But they have played much better than what Florida State has, and they're way better coach. Ain't no doubt about that. We are not Marshall. Does anyone else feel that Georgia blowout last year broke Florida State's soul for the next 20 years? I don't know about 20 years, but it was pretty rough. Let's see. Southern Man. I appreciate that you take the time to read all the comments. You're the best. Thank you. I appreciate that. I think it's fun to engage. I know Florida State's atrocious, but I still think it's fun to engage. You got to do it. Florida State is just like anybody else. They've got fans that want to be heard, and I want the opinions of everybody because I miss stuff too. We're all fallible in some way, shape, or form. Maximus, I think getting left out of the playoffs was a lot worse than the Georgia blowout. Well, once that happened, Norvell told guys that were hurt to go ahead and get surgeries, this, that, and the other, because the bowl game didn't mean anything. That's how bad it was. So with that, I'm going to wrap it up. Again, I'm going to have a show tomorrow that is all about one main thing. The coaching scenario, what's going on at Florida is a big impact, believe it or not, on Florida State. Talk about some of the young guys a little bit and maybe in the podcast. But it's about how everything works with timing now. Because, again, December 4th is signing day, how that impacts everything. We'll talk about all of that tomorrow on Locked On Seminoles. Everybody, thank you very much. Truly appreciate you tuning in once again. I will catch you again on Sunday. Monday, I'll get into a lot more coaching news. I'm not going to really cover Charleston Southern, by the way. If Florida State can't beat them, you know what? There's really no reason to discuss Florida State football at that point. But then again, they are 1-9, so they are pretty awful. Everybody have a good night. I'll talk to you soon. Take care.